Okay, welcome to QuickBooks. Yay. So, in this class, we are going to be the book, which is to help you certify for the actual QuickBooks exam. Now, again, we're going to be looking at the complete 2021 version, and this is the intro to QuickBooks. So, this is chapter 1 of your book. All right. So this is the book that we're looking at. So make sure with the link that I posted on the Google Classroom, it should take you to this link right here, which this is what it looks like, QuickBooks, and it's by Douglas Slater. Okay. And throughout this book here, right, since it's the complete version, it gives you pretty much everything you need to know and all the functions that are available in QuickBooks. So again, lots and lots of details. And the primary case study in this one is going to be called Imagine Photography. Okay. So if you crack open the book and you read the materials, basically the book basically shows you how to set up a company file, right, with the name called Imagine Photography. Okay. And every content that's in throughout the entire chapters basically gives you pretty much a set of instructions that walks you through Imagine Photography and how to conduct all of those functions in QuickBooks by using the case right here called Imagine Photography. Okay. So you'll see a lot of familiar names and a lot of things such as Bob Mason. Okay, he is a client at Imagine Photography, so we'll be seeing him around. Okay. And yes. So let's go ahead and talk about the different product lines that QuickBooks, or in this case Intuit, because if you notice this, it's by Intuit, which is the actual major company that is responsible for creating this accounting software called QuickBooks. They are, if you don't know who Intuit is, they are also the makers of TurboTax. Okay, they have a huge product line under Intuit, but I'm not talking about Intuit. I'm talking about QuickBooks. So this is, here it is. So here are the bottom or the top 5 QuickBook product lines that are available, right? You got QuickBooks Online, you have QuickBooks Pro, QuickBooks Premier, Accountant, and Enterprise. Okay. Now, of course, did you know that Premier and Enterprise are going to be used for industry-specific type of businesses? Now, what does that mean? Okay, so up in the top right, here are the 6 specific industries that you can belong into. So you could be a manufacturer, you could be a retail, you could be a professional service. Okay, so like accounting is an actual professional service, right, for taxes, auditing. Or you can even just have it for a general type of business. Okay, so as long as it fits between these 6 criterias, so each industry, right, a retail is going to look so much different than a manufacturing type of business, right? Especially the way that the financial statements are produced, right? The content, the materials, the accounts itself are all going to be different. And this is why with Premier and Enterprise, which is, we'll talk about the in-depth of what these are, allows you to make multiple reports that are geared towards that specific industry. Okay. And again, product lines of 2021, if you actually go to the official website, either intuit.com/QuickBooks or actually QuickBooks.com, you're going to notice that with the new 2021, they actually have other stuff such as QuickBooks Self-Employed, QuickBooks Live, QuickBooks, they have a lot of them, but in this case, in this book particularly, you need to know there are just 2 general ones because all of those other product lines, again, are geared towards specifics. So again, self-employed is more for those who own their own businesses. that do not need a pro to do anything. They can tailor their the exact functions that they need to run their small business. So that's what's really cool about 2021 is that there is a lot more variety with live, right? You can travel wherever you want to go and do accounting right then and there, live at the time. So that's really cool about QuickBooks. However, you just need to know that these are the top 5 ones that you would normally see that is available. Primarily for desktop versions, and of course, online is online. Okay, so let's talk about the difference between a desktop versus an online version. Okay, desktop is straightforward, where you do have to have it on a local computer drive at all times. Okay, so again, this could be at home, at your office, okay? It's on an actual computer, like an actual laptop, or an actual computer itself on an actual desktop, okay? Usually, most cases, desktops actually come in digital form, or you can actually have a hard copy, like an actual disk. But of course, with the new vast majority of technology nowadays, you know, everyone doesn't. It's hardly available to see a lot of laptops or a lot of computers that actually have disk drives anymore, right? CD-ROMs, DVD ports, whatever. It's rare now, so it's much more definitely up to date, where you can have it as a digital copy, and that's what the book has. The book has a digital copy of the program, which you guys are going to be downloading, which is going to be the QuickBooks Premier /Accountant. Okay. Now, again, that's just a desktop version, right? It's an actual one that is on a computer. Where the difference between that one and an online version is that, of course, an online is a cloud-based type of ordeal where you are sending information up to the cloud, which stores your information, and you can access it anywhere on the go, wherever you travel, as long as you log in to either the application or the website itself to have access to your company file. So this one, again, is more for people who go on business travels, who like to go overseas or to travel from state to state, right? This company is a huge company that is nationwide, right? Where they need to travel and they need to be on the go. And because they're traveling all the time, maybe it's not convenient for them to have to carry a laptop wherever they go because it could get heavy, right? So in this case, right, online gives you the accessibility with quick access to everything that you need. But again, it's a cloud-based type of service. And again, it allows more freedom to be able to move around and travel and to be able to record as you go. Okay? Where a desktop, unfortunately, you're only able to do it at the desk. Okay? So let's go ahead and go through the online version because it's a lot more simpler. And in this class, we're not going to learn online. We're going to be learning a desktop version. Okay. So in this case, online, we have basically each cloud-based type of service. Unfortunately, it's a subscription that you have to pay every single month, and it just depends on what kind of business you are. Again, this outlines a little few pieces of information that you could obtain per each package. Once again, you can find this on the actual website itself at intuit.com/QuickBooks. Okay, and you'll find all the details, and you even have like a little assistant that helps you select which package works best for you. Okay, so if you just need the bare minimum of just recording credit card transactions or whatever it is, you should go for the Simple Start. Okay, but if you have employees or you have to manage other expenses or bills or things like that, that's where you'll progress slowly up to each and every single one. And of course, as you progress up to each subscription, right, you get more cloud space. Okay, so it does have to do with a lot of storage because, again, the more details that you have, the more storage you need. So again, the more storage you need, the more pricier it gets per month. Now again, There is no, that you can sign up for a yearly subscription. They do have that available. But again, a lot of times, QuickBooks Online is not as flexible as desktop, because it doesn't give you these options, don't give you everything that you can do on a desktop, because again, online applications again are a lot more narrower, they're a lot more simplified, where desktop you can do almost anything and be as complicated as possible. Okay, so that's the difference between online and desktop, is that this is an online service where it's a cloud-based type of service where you are going to be doing a month-to-month subscription, and it's a subscription. You have to renew it every single either month or year. Okay. Then we'll talk about the desktop versions, okay? The primary three that you need to know is Pro, Premier, and Enterprise, okay? And we'll talk in description about each and every single one of them. Now, again, the Pro is usually for small businesses that want to start up their business, okay? And these are the primary three that you need to know for sure. These are the available desktop versions, okay? There's also an accountant, which we'll talk about in a second, okay? But let's go ahead and break down each and every single one, okay? So the first one, Pro, like we mentioned before, is for more smaller businesses, okay? You know, where you have like at least 10 employees or less, okay? You'd be able to do most of the functions as a small business, okay? And with that, again, you'll understand what items are in a few weeks from now. So items basically allows you to hold information into a file. So you have up to 14,500 items in each list, okay? And we're going to talk about lists in chapter 7, okay? Now, list, right, we have about 7 lists in QuickBooks. So think about that. That's 14,500 per list. So that means your customers can have up to 14,500 customers. You can have vendors, right? You can have up to 14,500 vendors, okay? And et cetera, okay? And again, you can only have available up to 1 to 3 users use the file at one time, okay? So when we talk about having desktop available in an office, right, it's a little IT that you need to know here is where you need to connect all the computers into one network, and that will allow the computers to go from user to multi-user mode. And this, under Pro, you can have up to 1 to 3 users use the accounting file at the same time, simultaneously, work on it simultaneously. So you can have the accountant work on it, the HR work on it, and your sales representative work on the same file at the same time, as long as they're in the same network. Okay, if you're online, you're everywhere else, okay, online's the only exception, right? Because you're traveling wherever you want to go, and anybody can access it at any given time, as long as they have access to the app. In this case, right, this is desktop. Desktop, unfortunately, you cannot work at home and be connected to the same network as your office. And that's why security is a huge thing, because you definitely don't want to have your files laying around and have people access it at home at all times, because that's potential for fraud. And you'll understand why as we put information in here, and how sensible this data is, and how dangerous it is to have it laying around. Okay, so that's Pro. Now, Premier is what we're going to be teaching you in this book, right? It teaches you Premier. It teaches you all the functionalities that that QuickBooks Premier can do. So in this case, right, it is for small to medium-sized businesses, okay? So typically, like something like an LLC that has maybe 20 employees or less or more, and has maybe a couple employees, like I said, it's like 20 people or more or less. And it can hold up to 1 million items per list. Okay, that's 1 million items per list. Okay, so that means your list can go on for a long time. Now, of course, if you think about it, if you're going to create a file and add millions of people in one file, you can imagine that opening that file would take forever, right? Just like Excel, the more formulas that you add into the Excel, it takes longer to load. Okay? And a cool thing about this is you could have up to 3 to 5 users use the file simultaneously at the same time. Okay, so that's an upgrade. So maybe you have the accountant, the HR, the sales representative, marketing, and someone inventory, right? You have 5 users that are available that can access the file at any given time at the same time. Make sure you know that. Now, of course, when you create users in general, you can create as many users, but they cannot access the file at the same time. Your limitations here says only up to 5 users can access the file at the same time. But you can have 20 users, again, for the QuickBooks. You can have as many users as you like, but only up to 5 people can access the file at one time. Okay? And again, you have over 150 plus industry-specific reports. So when we talk about industry-specific reports, right, out of those 6 industries, right, obviously my financial statements for a retail store is going to look significantly different than a financial statement from an actual manufacturing store, right? They're 2 completely different of operations, okay? So what this does is that when you recognize, when we talk about in chapter 12, when you set up your business and you set up what kind of entity it is, whether it's a sole proprietor or a corporation, you're feeding QuickBooks information to tailor itself to the company. So if you mark that it's a corporation, then that way it will give you industry specific reports automatically. Okay? And on top of that, you also choose the industry that you belong into. So it does, it filters and creates and tailors the QuickBooks to work for you and your company. Okay? And of course, they have forecasting. So again, if you are looking into making sales and you want to make some forecasting examples of, okay, if I invest in this project or this, if I put this grand opening sale, right? What's my forecast or potential sales that I could get from it? So once again, forecasting is a bonus because it allows you to make predictions. And of course, with the new 2021 version, it also allows you to have mobile access or mobile tracking. So what does this mean? It allows you to travel with your phone and get connected from the application. And what it does is it allows you to take your phone, travel, right? The best thing that you could do is, the cool thing is, I don't know if you've seen the commercial for the application or not. You can scan your receipts into your phone. And then when you get to your desktop, you plug it in and it will upload it automatically. Right? So that's the cool feature about mobile tracking, especially if you're purchasing stuff. You could just scan the barcode and it will take that receipt or take that amount and take it out from your QuickBooks or record it as a receipt. So it's really cool. Okay. Where enterprise is for larger companies such as corporations who have millions of employees, okay, or millions of people in their company. And this one, the only advantage of this is, again, is you get more than 1 million, where where Premier only has up to 1 million. You have more than 1 million in each list. And again, you have up to 30 users that can have access to the QuickBooks file at one time. So up to 30 users, that means a whole entire sales team can have access to QuickBooks, while the president's having access to the QuickBooks, while, VP, HR, whatever it is. You have up to 30 users that could use the file at one time. And of course, with a corporation, right? Usually it's a big, huge office building that has like 50 computers or more in a room. And that's what I mean. They're all under the same network. Same thing here. They have over 150 advanced industry reports. And of course, they have forecasting as well as mobile tracking. Right. Any questions here?
No.
Okay. And the last one that we're going to talk about is called accountant. Now, in this case, the accountant's version is very important. However, the accountant's version is only available as via digital copy, and it's actually only allowed for the IRS to have their hands on this, okay? Now, as a student, you get to have a temporary access code to this one. Because with accountants, right, the great thing about and the unique thing about accountant is it allows you to have access to all 3 desktop versions. So therefore, you have access to Pro, you have access to Premiere, and you have access to Enterprise, okay? Because each desktop version has their own specific file, okay? Yes, you can convert, but the only difference is that if you have features, right, that is not easily transferable, right? So for example, if I did Premiere and I have forecasting, right? Unfortunately, Pro is not able to open up a forecast, okay? So there's a huge difference. So the files for here, yes, you can interchange them, but you just have to know that because each version is a better version of another, you will lose information if you switch back from a lower to a higher one, okay? Or a higher to a lower one. However, accountant can access all 3. So that makes it much more easier and then they can also create those files for those specific ones. So if you need a Pro one, you can create a Pro copy there, and et cetera, okay? Now again, the accountant's version is meant for the IRS to help you file taxes for your company. So that is why this one's not available to the public. It's only available to the IRS, and it's also available as a student trial because, again, the book teaches Pro, Premiere, and Accountant, okay, for this book, right? And another thing too here is that it allowed with this student copies version, it allows you to have access to both Pro, Premiere, Accountant, and Enterprise, okay? It allows you to have access to all of them. And again, you can toggle between the different versions as well of QuickBooks. Okay. So again, this is primarily for tax purposes only. So again, that is the accountant. Okay. So then we're going to talk about what releases are. Okay. So the release basically tells you this information. It tells you your product information, your license, and everything. Okay, it even tells you when you actually downloaded the program. So in this case, this is an example of a Pro 2019, right? As you can see, I downloaded it since September of 2019. Once again, I taught this course for since then. It tells you what release number this is. Now, what's the difference between the edition and the release? Well, the edition basically is going to be the Pro, Premiere, and Enterprise. It's that program itself. The version is going to be what year it is. Okay, so QuickBooks Pro 2019 is definitely different from QuickBooks Pro 2021. Okay, and here's an indicator for here. And how do you have access to this? It's pretty simple. It's the only short key that I'm going to be showing you throughout this entire course. Okay, and that is the F2 function key button. That F2 function key button should be above your number keys on the keyboard. Okay, it stands for a function number 2. okay? And basically that pulls up all the information of your product information for your QuickBooks. It even gives you information on if you have a file open, it will tell you how many names are on there, how many lists are there, how many accounts you used. So it's pretty cool. And I'm going to show you this throughout the course of this class. So we'll take a look at it tomorrow. And we'll also take a look at it again on Thursday. Okay? So that's that. So now notice this. If you look right across where it says QuickBooks Pro 2020, 2019, it says something here and then it says R1. Now in this case, what does R1 even mean? Okay, it says release R1. So as you know, when programs are created, right, oftentimes you will get bugs or, functions don't work in specific areas. And usually people who are avid users of QuickBooks that need that function for some reason would note and go to the Intuit help section and basically post that there is an error or a bug that's going on in the QuickBooks program. So what happens is that you will get what's called a release code or a release number. And what that release number does is basically it's when you update your QuickBooks, you're updating it to the newest release, not upgrading. Okay, so don't confuse upgrade with update. Okay, updating allows you to download the patches you need to fix those functions in QuickBooks. And that's what a release number does. It's basically the amount of bugs and the amount of programs that you need to fix, okay? So all programs have those type of issues, okay? There's no such thing as a one stance program that's perfect. No, because every single year when Intuit upgrades QuickBooks, right, to a newer year, what it does is that it's adding more and more and more material. So in 2020, they introduced what's called the bank feeds window or the banks feed center, and I'll show you that in chapter 5, okay? But yes, that's a new feature for the 2021 version of QuickBooks, okay? Now, of course, that means there's room for a lot of errors. And again, in the book, it mentions that they're currently working on it. So as far as that, yes. Okay. So again, every program that releases usually has errors like that. Okay. Also, once again, here's a little quick note factor that you need to know about QuickBooks is that since we talked about files, right? When we talk about QuickBooks files, you need to know something about this section here. So okay. Well, anyways, when we talk about QuickBooks files, right? We mainly are talking about the company file, right? Each file that you open or have access to is basically a company's file or your means of keeping track of your company's financial expenses as well as income, right? Now with this, if you guys have downloaded the QuickBooks 2021, that means you can open up almost anything because we are in the year of 2021. That means you can open any old file up to 3 years prior. Okay, so that means 2018, 2019, 2020, you can open all those files using the 2021 version. However, let's say you were in my class previously and you downloaded the 2019 version, you cannot open anything newer than what the program you have. So you have a 2019, you cannot open anything in 2021, 2020, or anything above that. Okay, so that's a downside there. Now we'll talk about when you need to actually update your programs because here's the thing. So QuickBooks, they release a new QuickBooks every year, correct? Right? There's always 2020, 2021, right? Something's always changing every year. However, companies, they're not obligated to have to reinvest because QuickBooks, the program is expensive as is. The Pro already is already $250. All right. And on top of that, if they need it for multiple users to have access to the files, you can already think that's already $1,000 that they have to spend just for 5 users to have access to this. So you can imagine that is why QuickBooks allows you to upgrade your editions and versions up to 3 years instead of every single year. Okay? Because they give you that a little capability where you can take a 2018, 2019, 2020 files and convert them into a 2021. However, you can't go from 2019 to open anything newer than that. So that is where, that's why companies, they don't invest too much money because in this case, right, you're still able to do all the functions as you are with the regular QuickBooks. You don't need to upgrade it unless necessary. Okay, so usually the gap year is every 3 to 4 years. You may need to upgrade your QuickBooks. Okay, little fun fact there. Okay, so let's talk about Accounting 101. So when we talk about Accounting 101, we have pretty much concepts that you should need to know at least to be able to understand the basic functions while you read through the QuickBooks. Because again, QuickBooks is an accounting program. However, I'm going to tell you this. You do not need to have an accounting background nor accounting knowledge, an accounting degree in order to use QuickBooks. Okay? You don't. Why? Because the platform itself, the way that you enter transactions in, you don't need to know the accounting because it does the accounting for you. Okay? So if you make a sale, right? All you do is enter in a sales receipt or a sales form. You fill that out. The accounting will calculate how much cash you received. It will record the sale for you, and it will also record the income and record the expense all in behind the scenes. And you do not need to calculate any of that stuff. So that is why if you want to know what goes behind the scenes, that is exactly why accounting background would be necessary if you are interested in knowing how it happens. But in this case, right, we're boiling QuickBooks down to a simplicity, to a very simple program where all you have to do is just enter in your transaction the way you see it as if you are the clerk of the store, right? You type in, you punch something into the cash register, it's exactly what you're going to do in QuickBooks. You punch in the sale and everything does the work for you. Calculations, tax, whatever, it does everything for you. All you have to do is just collect the money and call it a day. All right? That is why you don't need an accounting background for QuickBooks. Okay? You absolutely don't need it. Okay? So a lot of medical students too come into the QuickBooks class because they're responsible for doing billing and coding. But they didn't have to need to go into the accounting to know medical billing and coding. They just need to know how to make a bill. All right? And that's what I mean by QuickBooks is universal to the point where all you're really doing is just keeping track of your business expenses and the revenues and incomes that is being collected, right? However, for those who are or who have the accounting background, only makes you that much better than someone who doesn't have the background. Because the great thing about having the accounting background is you have an advantage because you can manipulate QuickBooks in a way that makes it work for you instead of you instead of the QuickBooks just giving you the information. No, you can manipulate it to a point where if you made a mistake, since you know the accounting behind it, you can go and fix it yourself. Okay? Whereas someone who doesn't have that experience, they might make a mistake. They have to rely on the accountant to fix the problem. Right? I don't know how to undo a sales. I don't know how to undo it. So that is the situation, right? But we know how to reverse a transaction, right? You do a sales returns and allowances and you undo it. And that's why having the accounting background is a bonus, but you're not obligated to have it in order to learn QuickBooks. Okay? So, there we go. A few other things that you need to know is there are 5 types of accounts, okay? So in this case, we have assets, liabilities, equity, income. In QuickBooks, it's referred to income. No such thing as revenues. It's just income. And then you have expenses. So these are the 5 main account types, all right? Where each one, right, is pretty straightforward. Your assets is everything that you own. So property, your cash flow, your inventory. Liabilities are people that you owe. So if you owe somebody on a credit card, or you owe somebody on an account, or you own a bank for their loan, okay? Equity is going to be known as your net worth of the company. So what is the amount that you invested into your company? What is it worth? Okay? And of course, income is your generated income that you earn money through, whether it's sales or manufacturing, depending on what kind of business you are. So this is how you earn your money, through income. And then, of course, your expenses is going to be all the costs it takes you to operate your business. Okay? And, of course, with that being said, these are the 5 account types. So, same thing in the QuickBooks. You cannot create another one. There's only 5 and 5 only. Okay? However, we'll talk about sub-accounts and then subtypes of accounts and sub-items. So, there's a lot of other things that are out there that you can create as well. Okay, so instead of categories, we call them sub-type accounts. Sub-accounts. Okay, so it's a little confusion because we also know that in regular accounting, sub-accounts are your, categories. Okay, or no, and your sub-accounts are different from your categories, right? Sub-accounts is what gives you extra information of the main account. But in this case, in QuickBooks terms, we call those sub-accounts, which is your categories. So again, for example, you have other assets, you have receivables, and you actually have those kinds of ones. So you have other current liabilities and then long-term liabilities. Those are categories, which in QuickBooks are known as sub-type accounts. Okay? So then, of course, we also need to know that the underlying message here, or the underlying function of all businesses, is the accounting equation to make sure that all your assets is equivalent to your liabilities plus your equity, okay? And of course, this is the function, this line right here is primary, because you need to know that this function, this accounting equation, must hold true at all times. Okay? Then we're going to talk about a chart of accounts. So the chart of accounts is something that you need to build on your own. And this list can go for on and on and on. Okay? Now we're going to talk more in depth about the chart of accounts in chapter 12 when we set up our company file. This is the one thing that we're going to set up first, is going to be our chart of accounts. Okay? Now, what is a chart of accounts? It basically allows you to organize your transactions into some kind of meaningful way, all right? So if I received cash, right, therefore I increased my cash flow, so I need an account for my checking or cash itself, and I need to increase it, okay? And then I need to sell a product. Maybe I have inventory, right? So I must create an inventory account to reflect that I have items that I'm going to sell in order to make my money, okay? So that's what a chart of accounts does, and every single transaction is linked to an account. So that's why it's important that on chapter 12, we understand that the first step is to create the company file, but you need to create the chart of accounts first before you can actually start doing your actual transaction, okay? Now, here's the cool thing about having technology. You can add accounts as you go. You can create them on the spot. Okay, so that's a good and bad thing because, again, if you're the kind of person that doesn't keep track of what your information that you're adding in here, you could be adding multiple accounts that are the same account. All right, but the great thing is once we dive into QuickBooks, it's so much easier, especially when we use the fill handle tool, just like in Excel, right? When you type in a few letters of the account, it will give you a drop-down menu of what accounts exist in your chart of accounts, and you can select it that way. So in this case, it also gives you preventative measures to not just add random accounts whenever you feel like it. Okay, so again, it's pretty powerful QuickBooks, right? It makes it that much easier to look up accounts. And again, if you're not the kind of person that memorizes accounts, just type it in, and it will pull up the information for you. Okay, it makes it that much more easier. So once again, the chart of accounts is going to be a list of all the accounts that are necessary to organize your information and separate it by transactions. All right, and it's always going to be organized based on account type. Okay, just like in accounting, it's always going to be account type. You can put it in alphabetical order. However, it will be in alphabetical order based on account type. So no matter how many ways that you organize it, so we'll take a look at that in chapter 7 when we get to, chapter 12, when we get to organize our chart of accounts. You get to see how we can organize it, but at the end of the day, it's always going to be organized by account type. Okay, so that means assets go first, liability goes next, equity comes after, income goes after, and last but not least is your expenses. It has to go in that particular order. Okay? And then, of course, we're talking about a double entry type of accounting, which in this case, right, if we have one flow of a transaction, right, we have to understand that if we are using a debit, right, we must have an equal and opposite transaction. So instead of dipping into one account, we're dipping into multiple accounts for one transaction. And we call that the double entry system. Okay? So as you can see here, for example, right, we have cash because we sold some products. And of course, we had to charge sales tax. So in this case, right, the total amount of cash I received, because a customer's not going to give you cash for the product and cash for the sales tax. They're just going to give it to you as a lump sum. So that's exactly how we journalize it. We journalize it as a lump sum. However, we know that a portion of the money belongs to the government, right? We'll talk about sales tax in chapter 2, 3, and 4. Where sales tax is not something that we own, right? It's a liability because as a responsibility for having a business, the state will require you to charge sales tax to collect money to basically go for society. So in this case, you don't own that portion of the money, right? But you're obligated to charge it. So that's why in our accounts, we must separate it. Sales is the actual money that we earned from selling a product, and then a portion of that money is actually money that we owe to the government. And that's exactly how we record it. And their huge thing here is that we must have this notion where the rule says that all debits must equal the total credits, all right? And that's going to be true in QuickBooks too. When we talk about journalizing, it will not allow you to move any further if your debits and credits do not match. So that's a huge, huge rule. And just like you're going to apply science to this, if there's an action, you need to have an equal and opposite reaction. Okay? And that's the same thing with accounting. If you're going to place debits in one account, you need to have an equal and opposite credit in another account. Okay? So that is that. Okay? And again, debits are not going to be considered bad or good, okay? They're not going to be even considered as increase or decrease, right? And we'll talk about that in right here, okay? Because in this case, right, when we look at debits and credits, right, debits doesn't always mean it's good and credits doesn't always mean it's bad, right? But in context, when we talk in like the regular American English, when we say that you're going to credit my account, that means you're going to gain money. In this case, the idea of using debits and credits is that it can function as an increase or decrease, but it just depends on which account you're looking at. Okay?
Yes.
So assets, right, is typically increased with a debit. Okay? However, liabilities, right, things that you owe, debits actually decrease liabilities. So in context, this is called the normal balance, okay, of an account. So this is how it helps you be able to understand the flow of a transaction is that, well, if I'm going to be debiting my cash, what is going to be my equal and opposite credit, right? When we talk about revenues or sales itself, that's generated income. And what normally increases it? A credit does. So this is where you have your equal debit to credit system work and how do they flow in each account. Okay. Next we have here is going to be talking about cash versus accrual type basis. Now in this case, QuickBooks is automatically going to be defaulted as a accrual type of accounting, okay? Reason being is because most of the function keys or most of the functions and transactions and things that you enter in QuickBooks is because of the accrual type of basis of accounting. If you use a cash basis, it's straightforward, but you end up not using any of the extra functions that QuickBooks is meant for, right? If you have a cash basis, all you need is a checking account and you just need to record your cash transactions. I received cash here, I took out cash there, and that's all you need. But for the functionalities of accrual type of accounting, right, it allows you to create accounts payable, right? Bills that you owe, accounts receivable, right? People when customers owe you. It allows you to create statements. It allows you to create a lot more functionalities, especially on an accrual type of accounting. And the cool thing about the difference between cash and an accrual basis is that QuickBooks even allows you to switch over between cash and accrual basis, especially when you're doing your financial statements, right? You could see how much cash is actually flowing into your company versus how much potential cash could have been there, okay? So that's the important thing about there. Now, of course, the difference between it is under cash basis, it's pretty straightforward. Any income that you generate, you have to be receiving cash. So any mom and pop shop that says cash only, that's the reason why, because they're living on a cash basis. Meaning any expense that they incur, they have to have cash in order to make that transaction happen. All right? Whereas an accrual basis allows you to record income and record expenses based on completion of the task. Okay? So for example, I can record my revenue, right? If I sell a product, I sold the product. I earned it. All right? Regardless whether they gave me cash or not. Okay? And I have the option. I can either collect cash from the customer or I can say they owe me on an account. And that's the idea here, is that you will record the revenues as soon as you earn it. Okay? Not whether you received cash or not. Okay? And the same thing with expenses, right? When the job is done and it's been completed and you get a bill, that is when you're going to acknowledge that a job has been completed, an expense has incurred, regardless whether you paid or you didn't pay. Okay? So that's the idea behind that. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay. So let's talk about the accounting in QuickBooks. So as mentioned before, right? QuickBooks does everything for you. It does all the accounting and calculations behind the scenes for you. Okay? All you're doing here is, as a user, you are going to be using the single entry mode, because all you're doing is recording one transaction into one account. All right? And you do that through doing invoices, which is billing your customers, entering bills, which is when you receive bills from vendors, when you need to create memos, when you need to create checks. You're only entering in the transaction one time. QuickBooks will do the accounting behind the scenes, and it will use the double entry system where they're taking away the debits and credits behind the scenes. You won't see it. It's hidden. You have to pull up what's called a journal transaction report in order to see how that transaction actually occurred. So a great example, right? If you wrote a check out to pay for something, right? You're just recording that you wrote a check out. QuickBooks is going to record, you wrote a check, you incurred an expense, there's a debit. You also took away money, that's a credit. So QuickBooks is going to do all the work behind the scenes. Go ahead. Yes. Magdi, you had a question? No? Okay. Any questions?
No, not for me.
Okay. All right. So again, QuickBooks does, as QuickBooks, it's a double entry system. As a user of QuickBooks, you're going to be entering in the information as a single entry user. Okay. So again, you're only entering the information one time. QuickBooks does the work for you. Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about QuickBook files. In QuickBooks, there's a total of 3 different files that you're going to be recognizing. However, before I dive into the details of these files, okay, the ultimate one that you will be seeing most frequently is going to be the data file, or in this case, the book calls it the working data file, okay? And the working data file is going to be comprised of both of all 3, okay? So the end goal is that at the end of the day, you're going to constantly working on the working data file, okay? Now, what does that mean? I'll explain as I go through it. A working data file is when you create your company file, and that's the one that you're going to be constantly adding transactions to, okay? A company backup file is when you enter in all your transactions, and just to make sure that you have a copy of the file, you create a backup company file, okay? So a backup is a copy of the working data file, okay? Now, when you open up a backup file, you're creating another working data file. Okay, hold up, that's confusing. What is that again? So when you use a working data file and you create a company backup file, right? In order to open up the backup file, you're going to create a new working data file with all the details that was made a copy of the previous working data file. Okay, so that's what I mean. At the end of the day, you only have technically just one file, which is the working data file. Now, once you create a backup file, you cannot modify it, change it, or anything whatsoever. So a backup file is a pure copy of the working data file. If you need to make another copy of a backup file, then you have to create another copy. You cannot update this backup file. So once you create the backup file, that's it. It's done for. You have to create another one to save the changes that you made to the current working data file. Okay? So basically, the backup files basically is a screenshot of whatever you did that day. Okay? And as you update The working data file, you need to create a new backup to retain the new transactions that you added up to this one. Okay. So the good thing about having a backup file is that the main reason for a backup file is because, again, if you are at an office setting, okay, and all of you guys are working on this file at the same time, anything can happen to a computer, right? Oh my God, my computer crashed, right? I don't have enough memory. It won't work. I can't run the program. Internet is too slow. Many reasons can happen, and sometimes when you have too many people access a file at the same time, the file could most likely easily get corrupted. And sometimes if that ever happens and your computer crashes, then you could have potential that you can't open that file because it's so corrupted. So that is what a backup is for, to save all the changes to when the last time you had your backup for, right? So oftentimes many businesses and corporations, they always have a backup copy, especially when you have 30 users access the file at one time, adding in all the transactions at time. You can imagine that they have backup and backup and backup copies of the same exact file. Okay? And yes, that can happen, right? Just in case something happens. Now, here's also a note that you have to know too. You must have internet access at all times in order to use QuickBooks. Okay? If you don't have internet, you cannot access QuickBooks. It will not work. In fact, if you have really bad internet connection, that's probably why your QuickBooks will crash half the time. Okay? So again, you need to have internet at all times in order to use QuickBooks. There is no version of QuickBooks that can be worked offline. Okay? And the reason being for that is, one major thing is that QuickBooks will automatically save your work. Okay? Because it uses the internet to save it into your OneDrive. Okay? It does everything for you. Okay? So you don't need to press Control S all the time. It's going to automatically save your transactions. Okay? Automatically. Okay? Okay? So no need to save anything. The only thing that you need to save is if you want a copy of the work that you put into the working data file, then recommendation is to do a backup copy. Okay? Other stuff too is going to be the portable file. Now, of course, if you imagine this, if you're creating a company file and you have 30 users using it and you have 1 million customers and 1 million employees and 1 million vendors, you can imagine that the more information and the more transaction you put in there, the file is going to be super, 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 super heavy. A file could be as big as a gigabyte. Okay? It's that much information, especially the amount of transactions you can have in each working data file. You don't need to create a data file for every single time, but if you have one company file, right, you can use it for the whole year if you'd like. Just know that if you do, it makes it that much harder to email it to somebody because the file is so heavy. So that's why they created the portable version, so then you can easily access it, upload it onto the internet, send it to an email, because what it does is it takes the working data file and compresses it down to 10 times to make it so small that it's easily to be transferred through email. Okay? And that is why the student portable files are also in portable files. Okay? Just make sure you know the difference. Okay? But at the end of the day, when you get that portable file, in order to access the data file, you're going to open it up and create another working data file. So at the end of the day, the one that you need to know is the working data file. This is the one that you're constantly updating, adding all your transactions to. Backup is just a copy. Portable file is also a copy that you could just send to other people. That's it. Okay? Any questions here? Now we're going to actually talk about opening the actual file itself. So when you download QuickBooks and you've gone through the whole thing and you're ready to start using QuickBooks, you're going to get this gray screen, and the first thing you're going to see is this little window that gives you your company files that you can open. So as you can see, I have a copy right here where it says sales, okay? But down below, right, you have three options. You have one to create a company file, which we will spend chapter 12 with, so tomorrow. And this is where you're going to create your company file, right? Create the actual file. You need to create the file in order for you to use QuickBooks. If you don't have a file, you have to you can't do anything more than just stare at this home page. Okay? And then of course you can either open an existing working data file, portable file, or a backup file. Okay? And then the last one is to open up a sample file. Okay? So once you get into this open file section right here, right? So in order to open the company file, you have three options, right? It gives you a working data file, backup, and a portable file. So depending on which one that you are intending to work on or open up, in this class, I'm going to show you how to create a company file, but at the same time, what we're going to mostly practice is opening up a portable file, okay? So you're going to select the option that you want. Now, how do you restore a backup? Same thing, you click open and you click on the restore, okay? But how do you create a backup? That's pretty straightforward, right? How do you create the backup in the first place? You go to File and you click Backup Company. Straightforward, and then you have options. You want to do a local backup, or do you want to upload it up in the cloud? In this case, if you are using the desktop version, just go ahead and use the local backup on the local disk, all right? But that's how you do it, okay? And we'll look into more details in this in Chapter 12. Okay, especially with the backup, we're going to learn this on the very last day of class, or the last lecture. So in 4 weeks from now, you'll learn how to create the company backup. Okay. Same thing with a portable file. You just select the option to open up a portable file. Okay. Now, how do you create the portable file? In this case, it's slightly different, especially with wording. So you're still going to go to File, right? Just like File, Save. In this case, you go to File, and you're going to click on Send a Copy. Now, the option is you can either create an accountant's version copy, right, to send to your tax accountant, or you can actually create a portable company file, which is the second option. Okay, so again, we'll look at more so of this tomorrow. Okay, this is just where to find them. Okay. So then user interface, okay. Now, when we open up QuickBooks, usually the formatting of it should look exactly like this, right? We have the home page, we have the icon bar, we got the gray title bar, we got the actual title bar, right? It should look like this, okay? Now, again, this is just what the program looks like. Now, of course, we're going to talk about the home page. The home page is a graphic depiction of the flow of a transaction. So as you can see, it's broken down into 5 components, right? Top of the bar is your vendors. Middle of the bar is your customers. Bottom of the bar is your employees. On the right side, top right is your company. Bottom right is your banking. Okay? So each one has a flow of transactions. Okay? So for example, if I focus on my customers, right? If I make a sale, right? If I follow the arrows, right? If I create an invoice, right? If I bill my customers, they owe me money. So if I follow that line, it tells me the next thing is I should be receiving a payment. And once I receive a payment, follow that line out through one more time, then you need to go deposit the money into your bank. So this is exactly why you don't necessarily need an accounting background, because if you can understand this, the real basics of a store, if you're the store clerk and you just sold something, this is the same exact transaction. You're going to record that you sold something, you're going to receive the cash, and then you're going to deposit that cash to the bank. Straightforward. So that's why the homepage is going to be your best friend in regards to understanding the flow of transaction. Okay. Then we're going to talk about the icon bar. Okay, as you can see, the icon bar is usually on the left-hand panel. All right, in Chapter 7, I'm going to show you what you can do. You can customize it. You can move it around. However, it's by default on the left side of your screen. And what this icon bar does is basically it's just shortcuts to either centers or registers. And we'll talk about registers in Chapter 12. Okay, but in centers, we'll talk about it today. Okay, and then of course you can customize it, the icon bar, by putting your own icons and putting your own shortcuts that you want to put on there. Okay. But once again, it's just a quick access tool for you to just get to where you need to get to. That's the icon bar. All right. Last but not least is going to be your menu bar. This is how you navigate QuickBooks, okay? So reminder, this is how you navigate QuickBooks. This is how you enter your transactions, is by these three things, okay? Navigation-wise. The menu bar, right? Pretty straightforward, standard. It is a list of every single transaction that you can create into QuickBooks. So again, if I click on my company file, it's going to give you a drop-down list of everything that I can do in regards to the company. If it's a customer, every single transaction that is in regards to a customer. All right? So straightforward. If you've taken Excel, that's the same thing here, right? Each file on the menu bar gives you pretty much functions that's in order to use the program. Same thing here. Now, here's the thing that you need to know here is that the menu bar is just the gray part with the tabs, right? The top of that, the blue bar that has the title on there, that's your title bar. So menu bar, title bar, two different things. Your title bar is going to tell you what file you are currently using when you're using QuickBooks. Okay, so that's also important for you to know so you know you're in the correct file. So then we're going to talk about centers, okay? Now, centers are pretty straightforward. You have actually three really main ones, which is pretty much your customer center, vendor center, and your employee center. Now, of course, there's other centers such as report center, bank feed center, document center. You have all those other centers. But the most important ones is going to be these three centers. Now, if you access the center, whether it's through the menu bar, the home page, or the icon bar, it's going to give you this window. So this is an example of a vendor's center where it allows you to take a look at all the vendors that you have, all their account balances, gives you a quick brief overview of what that vendor is, who they are, what their address is, and all their contact information, as well as also gives you information on the transaction that you involved with them for that particular vendor. Okay? So again, all of this is going to be more relevant as we go through each section in the book. Okay? Entering transactions. Now, how do we enter transactions? QuickBooks makes it so much easier for you to go ahead and do that. So the first one we're going to do is, we're going to see that's most frequent or most commonly used is called forms. Okay, this is how you enter in a transaction. When we look at forms, right, it's pretty straightforward. If you've gone to the doctor's office, right, and you're a first-time patient, they make you fill out a form. That's the exact same thing here. You're filling in the boxes that are required. So the very first one you see is, who are you making this purchase order to? Who's the vendor? What class do they belong to? What was the date? What was the items that you purchased? What was the quantity? What was the amount? So, exactly, straightforward. You're filling this information out exactly like a form. So, number one, you got to fill out the vendor. Number two, fill out the class. Number three, fill out what form you're going to use or what template you're going to use. Next is the date. What's the PO number? What's the reference number? What's the address? What are the items? Straightforward. Okay. Second way that you could enter information is through a list. Okay. When we talk about list, right, as you can see, this is an example right here where you can fill in all the details in a list. So especially when you have a list of customers, and instead of having to fill out a form for each and every single one of them, you can go ahead and add them in like a list. All right, and this will, again, when we talk about chapter 4, which is next week. Actually, no, this week on Thursday, we will go ahead and take a look at how we're able to create these lists. Okay, so there is, yes, you can add multiple information at one time. Okay. And last but not least is called registers. Registers is where it's similar to a general ledger, where you're just entering the date, entering the account, and entering the amount directly into the register. Now, of course, when we talk about registers, we'll talk more in depth again tomorrow about it when we dive into creating our chart of accounts. The chart of accounts is set up based on registers as well. Okay, and I'll explain that later. But as a register, right, it's like a ledger account where you have an account balance at all times. Every time you enter in a transaction, it will update that account balance. Okay? So that's the cool thing about this, entering it in through a register. And we will take a look in our first example of using the register in chapter 4. Okay? And then, of course, we enter in our transactions by using items. Okay? Now, we'll talk briefly about items in chapter 7, but more so primarily in chapter 8 when we deal with inventory, because items is going to be things that you are going to be using to expand the sales process. So, again, we'll talk about all the item types in chapter 8, and we'll take a brief look at it in chapter 7, okay, where you get to create your service items, your inventory items, your sales tax items, okay? And shipping and handling items. Anything that has to do with the sales process is going to be considered items. And you can use items on invoices, bills, and so on and so forth. Okay. And then last but not least, QuickBooks Help. So any questions in regards to items or how we enter in transactions?
No. So the three ways are to register, the items, and what was the other one? Forms.
Forms, list, registers, and items. There's also
Those are the 3 ways.
4 ways to enter in a
4
transaction.
ways.
The 3 ways is to navigate you to enter those information. Okay. And then again, we will dive more into it when we reach chapter 4. Okay.
And it will be easier to understand once you're in the program, right?
Absolutely, 100%, yes. So then, QuickBooks Help. What does QuickBooks Help even do? So again, if you go to your menu bar at the top of QuickBooks and you click on that Help, here are the options that you can do here. So it's pretty extensive. If you need help for any reasons that the QuickBooks program is not functioning the way that you want it to be, they do have a person that you can contact directly using the support QuickBooks Help right there. You can ask a professional accountant. However, that is a paid service, right? You can ask the accountant. You can update your QuickBooks file here to the latest and greatest release. You can even upgrade your QuickBooks to another program. Let's say you have it Pro and you want to go to Premiere, you can toggle it that way. You can even upgrade the different version as well. So if you have 2019 and you want to upgrade it to the 2021, you can do that as well through the help. Okay. There's even if it's like a minor detail and helps in that way, they do have a manual that you can check out here. You can just click the About QuickBooks Desktop Pro or whatever down here, and it should give you like the manual on the program. There's a lot of things you can do. So for any reason that you need help with the program, my best recommendation is to go through them. You do need to register your QuickBooks program. And what I mean by register is that I mean that you have to claim it with your name and stuff. So then they are able to help you and they can pull up the registration and license code for you. You may have to do that yourself too, but if you go through the actual help center itself through QuickBooks, they already have that information. But if you actually just go to the support at intuit.quickbooks.com and you go to that help section, you do need to be able to search up all that information and have it ready when they ask you, which we know how to do, right? F2 key function. Okay. So again, that's the help section there. Any questions?
No.
All right, and that wraps up chapter 1. So this is where the review questions are gonna come to play. Okay. So at the end of each chapter, you will get a set of questions. Now in this case, chapter 1 is very short, so there's only 5 questions, but I also threw in the fill in the blank as well. So let's go ahead and answer these questions, okay? Number 1, the fundamental accounting equation that governs all accounting is
B.
B, assets plus liabilities equal equity is not correct.
C.
C, assets equals liabilities plus equity is
Plus liability.
that is correct. Yeah. So remember, it's assets is equal, not assets plus. Okay. All right. Number 2, which of the following statements is true?
C.
C, debits and credits. Yes, that's correct.
C.
Now let's go ahead and look at the other example or the other answers here. Debits are bad because they reduce income. That's an opinion, right? It's not technically bad if you reduce income, right? You could reduce income for many reasons because a customer doesn't want something. You have to reduce your income because they're returning a product to you. So that's not bad. B says equity is increased by a net loss. No, it is not, because equity, once again, stands as your net worth, and a loss means you lost money. So that definitely would not increase equity. Okay. And then D says assets are increased with a credit entry. And of course, if you use the accounting model, that is not true. Credits decrease assets. Okay. Number 3, under the accrual accounting,
D.
income and expenses are recorded when a transaction occurs. That is correct. Okay, good, right? Not when a sale is not recorded until customer pays, right? That's cash basis. Okay, all expenses are not recorded until you write a check. That's cash basis. Okay, you must maintain two separate accounting systems. which has nothing to do with accrual or cash. Okay. Number 4, QuickBooks is
C.
D.
D.
D, all of the above, okay?
D.
A job costing system. We will take a look at that in chapter 9, okay, and a little bit part on chapter 2. B says a payroll system. Yes, there is a section for employees, and the book does have a small section where we will take a look at payroll.
Yes.
And C, it is definitely a double entry system. Remember, QuickBooks is a double entry system. The QuickBooks user, meaning you, is the single entry user. Okay? So make sure that you read this carefully. So yes, it is all of the above.
Teacher,
Yes.
please return to question 4. A. A job costing system.
Okay, so in this case, a job costing system, right? We will take a look at this in chapter 2 and chapter 9, where what a job costing does is it's where you tailor a specific job to a specific customer. So for example, let's say I sell a camera, right? However, a customer can come into the store and request, hey, can you buy me a custom camera with custom parts? That's considered a job costing system, because now not only is this a customer asking for a custom job, it's a job costing system. It's hard to explain, but basically what the term job costing does is basically you are buying or doing something for a particular customer. So a job costing system is one of them.
I mean, payroll, it is employees. Double entry, you said double entry, but job costing, you don't mention.
In this case, it's in your book. But once again, that's why I said this one, you had to read chapter 1 to know this part, because it does tell you that it gives you a list of what QuickBooks does. And job costing is one of them. Yeah, and this is part of chapter 2 and chapter 9. So again, in my PowerPoint, there's a lot more detail in your book. Okay. All right, and then lastly, number 5, which is not a method of accessing the data entry screens. So basically the question asking is, which one is not a navigation?
Maybe D?
Okay, so we talked about the 3 ways to navigate QuickBooks, right? The home page, the icon bar, and the menu bar. I've not mentioned data entry button. There is no such thing as a data entry button. Okay, so D is the correct answer. Okay. So let's go ahead and see if I can test your knowledge here on the fill in the blank. Okay, as you enter in data in a familiar looking blank, QuickBooks handles the blank entries for you. Again, you don't need to be on point, but what's your general guess? Okay. When you enter data in familiar looking blank, QuickBooks handles the blank entries for you.
Familiar looking data, and it handles the accounting for you?
Okay, so, data, okay, good. Data isn't the correct one, but it is forms, but accounting is correct.
Oh, okay.
So then looking forms, right? Because that's how you enter in data, right? So data's close, but how do you enter data? You can enter it through a form. And good. And this is on page 22. Okay. Number 2, you should blank your data file regularly, okay? Because it is one of the most important safeguards, okay, that you can do to ensure the safety of your data.
Back up.
Backup is correct. Backup. So this is on page 14. Good. Number 3, okay, when you open up your working data file, okay, QuickBooks displays the blank, okay, screen, okay, and this screen, okay, is broken into 5 sections, okay, where each is dealing with a separate functional area of a business.
Homepage.
Homepage is correct, and that's on page 18. Okay. Number 4, blank are used in QuickBooks sales forms, okay? And it represents what the company buys and as well as sells. So this is a hard one, okay? Blank are used in QuickBooks sales process. Okay.
On the side it says items.
Yes. Good.
Okay.
Where did you say on the side it says items? Okay, good. All right. That one's a tricky one because that one, a lot of people kind of miss that one. It's definitely, you have to read for that one, but yes, it is page 25. Last but not least, number 5, a list which shows all the accounts in your working data file is called the blank.
Chart.
Chart of accounts.
Chart of accounts. Good. Excellent. And that is it for chapter. Okay. So any questions?